So we are just waiting for our audience to attend. We have Charlie remotely connected via Zoom.
Okay, welcome to the planning board meeting for December 6th. I'll start with a roll call. Alden Clark.
Here.
Beth Delisle.
Here.
Bob Cope.
Here.
Jamie Pennington.
Here.
Heather Rogers.
Here.
Charlie Palmisano.
Here.
Jim Bluestein is not here. Brian Balcom.
Here.
And Rick Tanger. So we have 8 of us here tonight. Okay, the first item on our agenda is an approval of a fire plan for 17 Harrison Street / 198 Water Street. I understand we are not going to have anybody here presenting.
We weren't originally, we happen to have Everett Chandler here. If there's any questions you might have for him, he's sort of welcome to speak to if you want. I'll pull up the plan if you want to just give a quick synopsis. Sure.
And Rick, I do need to recuse myself from that one.
Thank you. So, Brian will be, actually, we don't need it. This is not a special permit.
Correct.
So we don't need it.
Yeah.
If we-
I'm still here then.
Yeah.
Standing by.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Hi, Everett Chandler, Winters GEC. I did the survey here for the Donovans. They are purchasing a small parcel of land from Betsy Whitman next door.
From a fairly sizable parcel.
A small parcel, yes. She has a very large parcel that still has the required area, so it doesn't change anything with respect to the conformance with the area requirements. You can see in the center of the plan, there is a diagonal line there. That is the existing lot line, and to the bottom of the page is the new parcel B. You can see how the fenced area crosses out of the existing parcel A that they currently own. So this is just a convenience to square off the border for the Duffins.
And am I correct that the parcel to the north was a previous A&R plan that was joined that parcel?
Yeah, that was done in 2021, I believe.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions for Sharon? If not, I would accept a motion to endorse the approval not required plan.
Move to endorse the A&R.
Okay. Second for Bob. Since Charlie is not voting, we do not need a roll call. So all in favor, please raise your hands. Any opposed? Okay, done. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is the continued public hearing for the city of Newburyport, 3 High Street, also known as 447 Merrimack Street. And I understand this is another request to continue
For just 2 weeks.
for the next meeting, right, for the 20th. Could I have a motion to approve this continuance to the 20th?
I'll move to continue the site plan review application to December 20th.
Thank you. Second.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Heather. Seconds. Well, we're going to do a roll call because Charlie is not refusing. So, Alden.
Yes.
Beth.
Yes.
Bob.
Yes.
Jamie.
Yes.
Heather.
Yes.
Charlie.
Yes.
I vote yes. So that is continued. The next item is a public hearing for Eileen and Connell Ryan for 350 High Street for a 6C special permit. For any need?
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Lisa Mead, Tellerman Costa, 30 Green Street in Newburyport, on behalf of Eileen and Connell Ryan. And with me this evening is Eileen Rapp, who is the architect on the project. As the chair indicated, this is a 6C special permit for 350 High Street in Newburyport. You can go to the next slide, please. So the property is located in the R2 zoning district. It's also in the DCOD, not that that comes into play here, but just thought you'd like to know that. The Bryans proposed to convert the existing barn on their property to a single family home and then reduce or revert the existing 2-family structure to a single family home. So the existing structure on the property, which is the historic structure, which I'll talk about in a minute, is actually a 2-family home. There's a residence at the rear of that home. It's got a bedroom, kitchen, family room, things like that, but it's a two-family home. It has been since before the Ryans bought the property in 2002. So the idea is to convert that back into a single family and then have the barn be the other single family on the lot in conformance with section 6C. The property is conforming for lot area at 33,423 square feet, where 10,000 is the minimum required for a single family use and 15,000 for two family use in the R2 district. So obviously it has more than enough square footage. Property has 133.10 feet of frontage, where 90 for a single family is required and 120 is the minimum for a two family use. Therefore, it meets that requirement as well. So it's conforming. The only non-conformity is the front yard setback. Again, it's a historic house. It's at 11.5. That historic setback obviously is not going to be impacted by the renovations to the barn. Next slide, please. Otherwise, it conforms to all of the dimensional requirements. In fact, has a significant, it's a large lot. We're going to see it in a little bit. Has a significant amount of open space and very little lot coverage. So the existing two-family structure was constructed around 1770, according to the assessor's records, 1780, according to the district data sheets and the Form B. There is a Form B on this property. The structure is listed as contributory. It was known as the Josiah Little House. The Ryans have been great caretakers of it. I would say it's in pretty close to pristine condition. We have been to the Historic Commission. This is one of your requirements. We'll talk a little bit later. They are more than happy to hold a preservation restriction on this. We have given them a draft preservation restriction modeled on another 6C that we did in the city not too long ago. They reviewed it, and aside from waiting to hear what MHC would say or this board would say, are certainly willing to hold the restriction and approve the draft as is. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So this is the lot. As you can see, it is large. There is 33,000 square feet. You can see the house on the left-hand side. At the front, that's the historic structure, and then the barn at the back. So the barn isn't historic. There was an outbuilding there at one point in time, but very clearly over the years was removed and different barns were put up there. But certainly this structure is not historic, but it is old and certainly was built before 2021 when the board changed the 6C requirements. You will also see on this site plan, and you can also see the extent of all of the setbacks and how conforming it all is. What's also noted on this plan is the current driveway is right above the existing single-family home. The proposal is to close off that curb cut on High Street and then have a driveway closer to the property next door on that side of the lot, and then have parking for each of the structures there, and then one towards the back. We have had the DPW out there. They are very happy with this proposed location. There was a little concern about electric pole or utility pole in High Street. They don't have any issue with that. What's particularly noticeable about this is there's a series of very large old trees that run along the existing driveway. They will not be touched. There's no plan to remove those trees or anything with those trees. Those are going to stay intact. And then there's a small area of vegetation that already runs in addition to the fence that runs along the shared line with, I think that's the Newkirk's property right there. So that also won't be disturbed during the reconstruction. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eileen to talk about the proposal. Well, actually, if you can go, I think we have some photos. So if you go to the next slide, here's the mind maps, just so you can see what the area is like. Maybe this is where we could just walk out the door and see it at the end of the street. So it's right across the street from here practically. And then the next slide, please. So here's the current front entry. And so you'll see the driveway is going to go to the left of that utility pole. and still stay about 5 feet off the fence, did we say?
Even more.
Yeah.
I would say like 7.
Like 7 feet off that fence line. So, the DPW was fine, with all of that. And so with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Eileen.
Oh, Lisa, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So, what you see in front of you is the existing barn. And just to orient you on this drawing, the top 2 drawings are the existing front and left side of the existing barn. And the bottom 2 drawings are proposed. So I'll talk through some of those changes. On the bottom left drawing, you can see that we've added some dormers on the top, on the second level, doing doghouse dormers to pick up on the original structure up front. The openings for the garage will stay the same, but get modified as doors, as the type of style, I should say. And then the openings of the door and the window just flip-flop. To the left, you can see a very small addition. It's serving its purpose of a mudroom and bathroom addition on the left side there. They're very modest in size. On the bottom right drawing, you can see the west side elevation changing, and it's that you can see the small addition that I just spoke of, but on its side view. And then going towards the rear is a similar form of the gambrel structure heading towards the rear of the property, with dormers added to that as well. The building height remains the same. There's no change to that. So other than the dormers popping in, really the form itself is pretty intact. And if we go to the next slide, we can see the other elevations. The bottom left is the rear elevation. Again, that added gambrel form coming towards us in that drawing. And then the right side drawing, similarly, you could see it from the side view. Very modest in scale, and it's approximately 1,600 square feet right now, and we are adding 499 square feet to bring it just under 2,100, about 2,131 square feet. The materials on this building will be high-end windows, double hung, insulated glass. On the front elevations, we're gonna be aligned with the existing house of 6/6, but here on this back elevation and side, we've opened up a little more just to be 6/1, just to give a little opportunity for more light. Siding is clapboard, wood clapboard, and then the roof shingles are architectural asphalt shingles. So detailing to be nice with trim, etc. Very modest again in its additions and forms, and very much minimal. If we go back to the front elevation, really minimal in changes to what you experienced from the High Street facade. Now with that, I'll let Lisa continue with the presentation.
Thank you, Eileen. So I'd like to go through the 6C special permit requirements and then the general 10H7 special permit requirements as well. So under 6C, after you made your changes in 2021, April of 2021, the first criteria is the lot and building shall comply with the following development standards, and that is that they have to comply with the 2-family standards. And as I indicated earlier, the property more than complies with the 2-family standards for frontage and lot area. Both buildings have to comply with the setback requirements for principal single-family buildings. They both do, but for, of course, the non-conformity that's existing, we're not changing for the historic structure at 11.5 feet from the front yard setback from High Street. Both residential buildings shall comply with all other applicable zoning requirements, and they certainly do. There's not going to be any change to that, and we meet all of the rest of the requirements. And then the next section is that there's one of 3 different ways that the proposed building can be arranged on the lot. So the first 2 go to if you're adding a building to the lot. The last one, C, goes to one residential building may be created by conversion of an accessory building in existence on the effective date of the ordinance from which the section is derived, such as the garage or carriage house, obviously that's what we're doing. In such case, the converted building shall not be increased in height nor expanded outward other than by dormers, porches, or decks not exceeding 500 square feet in total. The applicant proposal falls under this section C. We're proposing to convert the rear barn, as I said. The conversion is not increasing the height and only expanding outwardly by 302 square feet, which is less than the 500 square feet. So you're asking, well, what's the 499? That's not the actual footprint extension. The 302 is the actual footprint extension. The 499 is if you include the new area on the second floor with the dormers, right? So that's the total, 499 is the total new square footage. 302 is the footprint expansion, or the outward expansion, if you will. When the lot contain, the next criteria, next slide, please, is when the lot contain, oh, sorry, thank you. Lot contains a contributing structure on the district data sheets, then we have to offer a historic preservation restriction, in which we have done that. And I noted that in my earlier presentation, and given the magnitude of historic nature of this main structure, the Historic Commission is more than happy to have a preservation restriction on the Josiah Little House. Before granting the special permit under this section 6C, the planning board shall find that all of the following criteria are met. The design and layout of the buildings and open space in the site will be consistent with the established character, scale, massing, and density of the surrounding neighborhood. Here, the proposed conversion of the barn to a residential structure will certainly be consistent with the established character, massing, and scale and density of the surrounding neighborhood. We're not adding a new building. They're very modest extension of that building. Obviously, we're not changing the main building, and the surrounding buildings are similar. This is one of the largest lots in the area. Directly behind this is Parker Ridge. You know that's a big condominium, so a lot of open space in the back. And then there are two homes, of course, on either side, and then across the street, of course, is this property and a couple of other single-family homes. There are no external changes to the prominent historically significant building, and consistent with 6C, the conversion of the barn to a residence has minimal impact on the appearance of it as it is expressed from High Street. Further, the barn is set back from High Street and not encroaching on any of the surrounding properties. The next criteria is the building and accessory off-street parking will maintain compatible relationship to the adjacent properties in terms of location and design, and not significantly reduce from the privacy of adjacent properties. Again, we're not moving the building at all. We're adjusting the parking, and that should be compatible as well. The Ryans have talked about this with all of their neighbors. I don't know that anybody is here tonight, and nobody seems to have an issue with the layout and design of the proposed project. The developing a second residential building on the lot will be equally or more beneficial to the neighborhood than subdividing the lot or providing two dwelling units in a two-family dwelling. So subdividing the lot is not feasible. There's not enough space to create two lots here. There's already an existing two-family in this building. I just want to say that. We don't want to create any new nonconformities by obviously subdividing the lot. I indicated earlier, there is a small small unit in the back of the main structure. You know, instead of adding to the structure, the Ryans thought it was much more appropriate to have the conversion of the barn. And what I would like you to do, and I'm going to jump ahead because I was going to use this for a different purpose, but I think it's really important for this particular point. If you go all the way to the very last slide. So we did a sketch of what it would be like to add to by right to the existing home to make it a full two-family home. So the lot is so big that by right, you could essentially add 10,000 square feet of living space to that house. By right, without violating DCOD, without changing the roof line, no historic review. It's already a two-family. It has sufficient frontage and sufficient area. And those are the two kind of back of the napkin sketches that would do that. So as you can see, certainly that's not what the Ryans want to do, but this criteria goes to whether or not that would be, you know, you could do a two-family. Yes, the answer is you could do a two-family. No, we don't think it's appropriate for the lot. And would prefer to use the existing barn that's there. So if you can go back up to that slide. In granting the special permit to allow 2 residential buildings on a lot, the planning board may impose building size or setback standards that are more restrictive. I don't know that the board wants to do that, but if you did, we'd have to talk about it. I don't think it's an issue here. And then the last one is in consideration of increase in value representing the granting of a special permit under this section. The applicant would have to pay into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund $20 per square foot of the additional second residential unit. I might add that if we were to do a 2-family as just expanding by right, we would not have to pay into the Affordable Housing Trust. We would be able to do it by right. So this actually allows for the payment into the Affordable Housing Trust as well. In addition, and you don't have to go any further right now. Well, you can go to the next slide. I didn't do a slide for every one of the general special permit criteria, but I'll just run through it. So under 10H7, in order to grant a special permit, the general special permit criteria has to be met as well. And the first is that the requested use is listed in the table of use regulations. And here, the property is located in the R2 zoning district, and 6C and a 2-family use is allowed in the use table. The requested use is essential or desirable to the public convenience or welfare. Here, again, the use is a 6C is allowed by special permit in the R2 district. And it allows for a modestly dense district that already exists in the city. We're not changing the density at all, but for the 302 square feet of additional footprint. And the city includes 6C in order to allow more appropriate redevelopment of a lot rather than something like that 2-family that I expressed on there earlier. In fact, I think if you go back to your minutes of your February and March meetings, when you adopted the new 6C, one of the concerns was having a very large 2-family on the lot, AKA the issues that were brought up in the Hancock Street development, where 6C was not employed and the larger 2-family was used by right, essentially. So we believe that we certainly meet that. This proposal is much more desirable to the public convenience and welfare in the general area than just doing a straight up 2-family adjustment on the lot. The next is the requested use will not create any undue traffic congestion or unduly impair pedestrian safety. Here, the use on the lot's not changing. We're gonna have plenty of parking on the lot. We're cutting out one of the curb cuts and only gonna have one in a better location according to DPW. The next is the requested use will not overload public water, drainage, or sewer. Again, there's no change in use on the property and that shouldn't have any impact at all. The next general special permit criteria is whether or not there's any special regulations for the use or the request of a special permit, and there are none. The next is that the requested use will not impair the integrity or character of the district or adjoining districts. Again, the 6C is appropriate for this district, the 2-family use, which we're not seeking a special permit for, but is appropriate for the R2 district. And therefore it won't impair the integrity or character of the district, particularly the location of this barn at the back, the modest outward expansion of it, along with the continued 2-family use. The requested use will not by its addition to the neighborhood cause an excess of that particular use. Again, we're not changing the use at all. And the 6C is still, there are plenty of 1-family homes along High Street or in carriage houses along High Street. And then the last is that the proposed use shall not be conducted in a manner so as to commit any dangerous, nauseous, or injurious or other objectionable activities. And of course, that would not be the case here. So if you go to the next slide, I just want to show, there's a picture of the existing barn that's on the property. Next slide, please. And here's the back of it. And next slide, please. And again, another picture of the back of the barn and the side. Next slide. And then here's the side closest to the existing structure on the lot. That would be the east side. And next slide, please. And then there's the west side. And the next slide. And then we have a picture of the main house, which is remaining unchanged. Next slide. And there's the back of the main house and the entry into that second unit. Next slide. And here's the side of this house. All of you've seen it a million times. Next slide, please. And again, the front, closer up on the front, and the next slide. And again, it's the east side of the main Josiah Little house. And the next slide, please. And then again, another shot of the east side. So with that, we believe that the board can grant a special permit for 6C and allow the conversion of this carriage house to a single family home, which would eliminate the two-family use in the main house. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for the applicant?
I just have one small question.
Sure.
How close will the driveway be to the crosswalk out here?
So we looked at that with the DPW, and I don't know if we show the crosswalk on there. You still have to, we're still east of the crosswalk, right?
Yes.
It's yeah, because I crossed the street when I came over to meet the DPW.
And the crosswalk comes in roughly in front of the abutter, the Nickerson to the north,
Yeah.
the northwest way, yeah.
Up there,
So somewhat aligned with their front door.
so a little bit further up,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I had to cross over to meet the DPW.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is there vegetation right up to the sidewalk?
No, there's a fence there, but there's no real vegetation right there. Then there's small evergreens and some other ground covering that's planted as you go towards the back. So there's some,
Okay.
so that vegetation you see there is gonna go, because that's where the driveway is gonna go. Right? And so there's a little bit of grass on the left, but the fence starts, as you can see, the fence starts further back
Okay.
in.
Okay, thank you.
So I have no problem with the overall concept. I'm sure that the planning office has addressed with you the issue of the wording of the zoning, item C, which says that the only outward expansion is by dormers, porches, or decks. So I think, I'm not sure that we can actually grant that special permit. I think that it's something that we would either need to amend the zoning ordinance or get a variance. And I think probably the best thing to do would be to amend the zoning ordinance to do this.
So I disagree with you, because I don't think it says only, first of all, that word is not used. Secondly, I can tell you that the zoning administrator is the one that sent us forward under this, and her job is to interpret the zoning. Based upon that, my client expended a significant amount of money to get to this point. In the zoning, nowhere do porches and decks count towards square footage of a building, nowhere in the zoning. They don't even count towards setbacks if they're not above 3 feet. So nowhere in the zoning do we include porches and decks as part of square footage of a building. And I went back to the minutes of the February 17th meeting. And I think it's interesting that the chair at the time, Bonnie, said in her presentation, and a conversion of the garage or carriage house with no more than 500 square feet of expansion. Didn't limit it to, she said, expansion of the carriage house or barn. Decks and porches don't expand anything in the city of Newburyport under zoning. They just don't do it. They're not counted as square footage that expands anything. And that's how we read this. And despite the recitation throughout the minutes about how the goal of the board, a laudable goal, was to make this ordinance clearer and easier to understand for people than the prior ordinance. This is the second 6C I've been in here on, and we've had a debate about the language of the ordinance, right? Not on this particular point, but so I think everybody tries really hard. And Rick, I looked through the ordinance, the minutes, to see if you had any discussion of that particular point related to porches and decks, and nowhere in the minutes do you talk about that. The only thing that's talked about relative to the expansion, the 500 square feet of expansion, is Bonnie's comment related to carriage houses and garages. In fact, one of the things that she does say very specifically also is one of the things that you're trying to prevent is there are times when a huge two-family structure would be inappropriate. Right? So that's one of the things you're trying to prevent, which we could do by right. The Ryans don't want to do that. The Ryans raised their family here. They could turn around. There are people in this room that would do this. They could turn around and sell this house for a significant amount of money to anybody to put that addition on or something like it by right in this city. And that's not the intent of this ordinance. And I certainly can't believe that the intent of the ordinance is to not allow a person to add any footprint to a carriage house or a barn if they're gonna reuse it for residential purpose. I understand that you don't want it to have some giant 1,000 square foot addition or something like that, right? But the use of the term porches or decks, nowhere in the ordinance do they count as square footage to a structure. And that's how we read it, and that's how the zoning administrator read it.
So how would you explain the inclusion of the words dormers, porches, or decks as part of that limitation?
I think that it's confusing is my point. I think that porches, decks, additions, I guess you would include all of it, right? I mean, and we're not doing anything in excess of all of it, right? We're having an addition and porches and decks that are still under 499 square feet, 500 square feet. So I just, if somewhere in the ordinance, we included porches and decks as part of a building, then I think that it would be clear, but we don't. So you might want to amend it to make it clearer. But our interpretation, the zoning administrator's interpretation, is that you can expand a footprint by not more than 500 square feet.
Are there any other questions? Okay, I will open up for public comment then. Does anybody wish to speak on this application? Yeah, I will close.
We did have one hand raised a moment ago, but I don't see it raised now, remotely, I should say. But I don't see that now. Okay.
In that case, I'll close the public comment. Or do you, yeah, so now open it to the bank.
I was curious about utility connections and understanding that there are still 2 residential units on the site and there may not be capacity issues in terms of available utility capacity in the street. How are those connections actually anticipated? Particularly electrical, will that be overhead? Will that be buried?
I
Has
don't,
that been thought about?
no, I don't think we've gotten that far in the plans. I don't think anything's buried out there.
Open it up for any discussion before. Or? I'll feel comfortable with it. Accept the motion.
I'll move to approve the 6C special permit with the special conditions included in the staff report.
Mr. Smith?
I'll second.
Okay, I will do a roll call.
Yes.
I'm sorry, could I just ask for a clarification? Is that a vote to include the conditions that were drafted as possible in the staff report, or is that a component of the vote here?
For the special conditions.
Yes.
Okay,
It's a special condition.
okay, thank you.
So that's the no further subdivision contribution to the Affordable Housing Trust and the historical mission,
Yeah.
as well as the sidewalk repair.
Can I just ask a question about the historic preservation restriction? So it says part of the grant of a building permit for the second or rear building that we have to have a fully drafted. Okay, well, I didn't have it fully drafted, that's fine. Okay, I thought it had to be reports, that's fine, yeah.
Okay, so we have Arlen and Charlie, Beth,
Yes.
Bob.
Yes.
There you go. Jamie,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
and I hate to do it, but I'm gonna vote no. I really support this project, but I just don't feel comfortable given the way we wrote the ordinance. So I'm gonna vote no on this. And it passes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, the next item is a special permit for Newburyport Brewing Company for New Pasture Road, special permit use.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. This is a special permit application for Newburyport Brewing indoor pickleball and recreation usage. The brewery currently leases 8,330 square feet inside a 14,330 square foot building at Forney Pasture Road. There are no proposed changes to the existing physical building structure. The existing 8,330 square feet of leased indoor space will be broken down as follows. 2,276 square feet, which is our existing tasting room, which is no changes. 3,909 square feet of new indoor courts, so 2 pickleball and 1 bocce court. Originally, when we met with Andy at the beginning of the summer, there was talk about potentially 3 pickleball courts, but there wasn't room for our brewing area and a 3rd court. So we improvised and made a bocce court instead. So that's what you see in the middle area, and the 2 pickleball courts are in the back area. The main entrance of the building is on the south side where the cursor is right there. 1,000 square feet common area walkways, other recreation, 585 square feet for brewing and packaging, 269 square feet for storage of beer kegs and cans. We also have 2 brewing systems, one barrel, 3 vessel direct fire brewing system, a 5-gallon test batch electric brewing system. Our equipment, hoses, brewing ingredients. We're moving our QA lab and our beer seltzer tasting into existing office number 1. And we have 130 square feet of reception area, and then various pickleball waiting / staging area seating for 8 people, and 73 square feet of entranceway hallway. So all areas are open to the public during operating hours. No memberships will be required. Everything's ground floor, wheelchair accessible, ADA compliant. Total on-site parking is 54 spaces. Occupancy is 145 people and 5 staff. And the bathroom requirements and layouts meet those numbers. We went through the zoning determination, and also the use requested is listed in the table of use regulations as passed in October of this year with a second reading on October 30th. That includes our location at Forney Pasture Road. Specifically, that was done to support the pickleball expansion here for the brewery. Is it essential, desirable to public convenience and welfare? Yes. Pickleball provides a health and wellness benefit to our community, and is enjoyed by people of all ages and athletic ability. So indoor pickleball played in a climate controlled environment allows people to play year round. When the weather might not allow them to play outside. Those of you who have played pickleball know that there's an audible sound when the paddle hits the ball. And obviously being inside, we're not going to provide any, or there's not going to be any sound issues with neighbors or outside the building. And I think this offers the city an opportunity for people to play pickleball and enjoy the sport in an indoor setting without having to find a space outside that might create a noise pollution. The requested use will not create undue traffic congestion or impair pedestrian safety. We provide ample on-site parking that exceeds the parking code. The building is located on a wide dead-end street, and our busiest times at the brewery coincide with the hours and days that other businesses on the dead-end street are closed. That's been the case for the last 12 years since we've been there. Nothing else will change with that. Pickleball wise, on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, so we plan to be closed on Monday. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in the mornings from 9 AM to 12 PM will be a $10 walk-in. So it's a nice opportunity for retirees, seniors, folks who want to use pickleball in a social setting, to come in, first come, first serve, and be part of the community. So that's a service we're also offering on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday mornings. On Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, pickleball courts will be reserved on an hour or 2-hour basis by people online or in person upon their arrival. The requested use will not overload any public water drainage sewer system or any municipal system. Not a concern with this project. Again, we're not making any changes to the exterior of the building. Any special regulations, not a concern with this project. Requested use will not impair the integrity or character of the district. Again, we believe this will benefit health and welfare and add a benefit for our community. And will be an addition to the neighborhood and will not cause an excess that could be detrimental to the character of the neighborhood, correct? And the proposed use is in harmony with the purpose and intent of this ordinance. That is correct. So, are there any questions about how we want to use the pickleball courts? Hopefully this provides you some information how we intend to use the pickleball courts at our location and provide the courts for public use.
Any questions, board? Yes, Mike.
I'm curious about the parking
Sure.
and how much of the parking area you actually control.
Yeah,
And there's another tenant in the building.
correct.
Have you factored in parking for that tenant?
We have, yes, thank you. So earlier this week, I received a call that there were dumpsters and trailers and
Lots of stuff.
snowmobiles and so on and so forth parked on the property. So currently, the demand at the brewery, because we don't have pickleball yet, we don't use those spots located on that side of the building. And we're talking about on the drawing, the upper right-hand corner, those spaces right there. So currently Meadows Construction, they own trucks and dumpsters that they transfer trash to and from or building materials to and from their project sites. At the time, earlier this week, there were extra trailers for moving heavy equipment like cats and diggers. Those have been removed from the property. Those have been put on the landlord's personal property. And the dumpsters have been primarily moved out back. There were 4 when I drove in this morning. There were 5 when I left this afternoon. So our landlord has been our landlord for the last 10 years. So we have a really good relationship with him. And I explained that should we get the special permit, should this open, we will need these parking spaces open for our use, not for.
So is there anything in your lease that gives you like?
There is, but it's on the original 36 parking spots. So we can control it through the lease if we make a lease addendum. But I think at this point, because we have such a great relationship, I made one call, they were gone the next day. So he understands that this is a project we want to get done and you know, he doesn't want to create any issues for us either.
All of the spaces on the right side of the plan, are they striped? No.
They are, except for the bottom 2 are not striped. Those 2 will need a stripe.
Any other questions?
Just to clarify then, does that satisfy the staff report requirement for the striped parking spaces?
Yes.
I didn't actually count them all myself. So.
Yeah, sorry, if I may, and I did not, Jennifer Blanchet had, looked at this particular issue and recommended, special condition to address the issue that Bob had raised and you're responding to now. Was incorporated in the staff report to suggest that, it says here, a total of 50 spaces, shall be required for the uses on site, meaning both, uses. No less than 50 spaces shall be striped and available for parking as shown on the submitted plan, so the removal of the equipment, plus the striping there, or anything to be added, there's a few stripes that obviously have to be added, would address that concern that was discussed here. So, yeah, and the number and the actual availability of the people. So, yeah, okay.
I just wanted to make sure.
To follow up on that, I thought you said that there were 54 spaces.
There's 54.
So are those 54 or are those 50?
No, that's 54 on the.
So you don't really need to strike those bottom two, do you?
We can if we want to make it
It's,
delineated
yeah.
parking spot, yes.
You may find.
Yeah, more friendly where people can see it in the dark.
Looking at your floor plan, there's a door in the back. Is that a public door or is that just only a?
No, that's a locked door, that's an access door, metal door. So it has a panic exit on the exit side, on the interior side, and then it's a metal handle that we had installed a few years ago.
So not that it really affects, whether this can be approved or not, but in effect, the person in the top right-hand corner would have to walk all the way around the building to get in. It's a long walk. I'm not.
Yeah, I think 99.9% of the folks will come in through the front.
Right. Is there another door to get, this is.
No, there's no other access. So, and it's locked at all times, so we don't want people to be able to come in
Right.
and access alcohol.
So even though, I guess my point is that even though zoning requires those 50 spaces, it's likely that those last 10 or so spaces probably aren't gonna be used very much, because it's like a long walk.
People are,
Especially.
they do what they do, right? So if somebody sees it, if they're at the front of the building and they, they don't wanna walk all the way around, that's their prerogative, I guess.
Well, these are very athletic people, right?
Yeah,
Yes, that's correct.
athletic-
Any athletic ability.
yeah.
So I have a question. I don't know how to put my hand up on this Zoom thing. May I ask?
You go ahead.
Okay, so I thank you for explaining a little bit about the public access to the pickleball courts. You had mentioned that there's going to be some sort of membership as well. Have you refined that or defined that? And will this mean that there will always be public access to this in combination with a membership?
There will always be public access. There will not be any memberships required.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's just you're having a reserve time.
Yeah, you have to reserve the court, just like you would for any other activity, golf, whatever. You have to reserve the time. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Except for in the mornings. So those Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday mornings are designed to be more social
For the
opportunities.
walk-ins, you said.
Correct. Correct.
I have a question. When we were together before, when the pickleball National Association made it, I didn't know there was one.
Yeah.
I learned that. You were talking at that time, I believe, about potentially a seasonal outdoor court. Is that fallen away from the?
No, I think that could have been a different project, but we're not gonna do anything else outdoors. This is just indoors and under the building's roof. So, that's it.
Okay, I'll open up the public hearing. Is there any public comment on this? Does anybody want to speak on this application? Anybody online? Okay, we'll close the public comment. And open it up for discussion and a motion. Go ahead, Bert.
So I'll make a motion to approve the special permit with the special conditions in the staff report.
We'll change stripping to striping.
Yeah.
We'll correct the typos.
Is there a second? No seconds. Okay, do a roll call again. Alden,
Yes.
Jeff,
Yes.
Bob?
Yeah.
Jamie,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Charlie,
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And our final public hearing for the night is the hearing for Balmoral Development, 124 High Street, with a DOD special permit, a special permit for use, and a special permit for non-convenience.
Members of the board, chair, for the record, Lisa Mead, Tellerman Costa, 30 Green Street, on behalf of Balmoral Development, and Chris Horn, who is the principal in that company, is here, and the architect on the project is Eileen Graff. And what we did with this project is see how many permits we could get to do the project. As I go through this, you'll see we've gotten quite a number of reviews. So this is a project at 124 High Street. For all of those you'll see in a minute. This is the brick Federalist that is pretty close to being directly across from the George Washington statue. For those of you who don't know, a little piece of trivia, that statue of George Washington standing up is only one of two of him standing up in the entire world. The other one is in Paris. I used to tell people that on my little student tours. So this is a special permit for multifamily use, a DOD special permit due to the minor changes to the exterior of the main structure and removal of an attachment of the existing garage and construction of a new additional garage in the rear, and a special permit for non-conformities due to the front yard setback and side setback of the existing garage, the front yard setback of the main structure, the side yard setback of the existing garage. You don't usually hear special permits for non-conformities, but since this is in the DOD, you get to do everything that is a special permit. Brick federal style house was constructed around 1814, but was gutted by a fire in 2001. Some of the more, I'll say, inappropriate additions are to the rear of the structure. We're going to talk about those in a little bit. That's where actually the biggest change happens on our proposal. The property is currently mixed use, which is not allowed in the R3 district. The property includes an existing garage, which did not exist on the 1906, 1914, or 1924 historic maps, and it has a bit of an addition on the back that we're proposing to remove. So you'll see that some of the inappropriate additions on the rear of the main structure includes a spiral staircase, which you all know was around in 1814. So we're trying to remove that so that it's more appropriate. So with that, you can go to the next slide, please. So this does have a Form B. We were to the Historic Commission for the advisory review. I believe you have that in your packet. You should. And the Historic Commission was fine with our proposals and did not believe that it had an adverse impact on the historic nature of the building or the integrity of the district. So if you can go to the next slide, please. That's the second part of the Form B. You'll see that this is listed as contributory to the district on this page. Next slide, please. And here are the Sanborn maps. So this is the 1888 Sanborn map. This is before they had divisions of property, but you can see the main structure up front. Next slide, please. And this is the 1894. Now we have some lot lines that have gone in. We have a different outbuilding in the back on this lot. This obviously, that outbuilding no longer there. Next slide, please. And here's another footprint. No outbuildings in this particular slide. Next slide, please. 1906. We have the lot as it exists today, and no outbuildings whatsoever. Right. Next slide, please. And then we have the 1924 assessor's map, and there's that little addition on the side. That doesn't exist either. Next slide, please. Excuse me, here's the 1924 assessor's map. And here we have that addition on the side is gone. The lot itself takes the form it does today. And you have the main federal structure. Next slide. So here's one of the historic photos. This is referred to as the Albert Hale House. And the Sewell Place, excuse me, but this is a view from across the street when we used to have Elm Street on High Street. Next slide, please. And here's a photo of the building, as you can see, in the Historic Commission report refers to this. Most of the roof was gone, and obviously the windows and the interior, completely gutted. So next slide, please. So the proposal is to renovate the existing structure by changing the internal layout of the structure and converting it into a multifamily structure of 4 residential units. The multifamily use is allowed in the R3 district by special permit, which is one of the permits we're seeking from you tonight. And I said the Historic Commission has issued its recommendation as well. We also had to go to the Zoning Board of Appeals to seek a variance, and it was kind of an odd situation. The existing use is non-conforming, and so even though the mixed use isn't allowed in the district, you have to go to the closest district to find out what your dimensional requirements are. So it met the dimensional requirements of the non-conforming use. And when we switch it to the R3 and have it be a conforming use, the requirements are different for frontage, lot area, and height. So if we didn't get a variance and we wanted to make a change, we'd actually have had to make the building shorter. So the zoning board saw the wisdom in our proposal and granted us 3 variances to allow the proposal to go forward. And Eileen's going to go through these details in a minute, but what I just want to do is an overview of the changes we're proposing to the exterior of the structure. So we're adding an egress stair to the first floor on the easterly side of the building and replacing an existing window with a French door, expanding 2 exterior window wells, one in the front and one on side elevation, enclosing the existing decks in the rear and removing a spiral staircase, and constructing an additional detached garage in the rear. I think one of the things that's really important, and if Andy, you can go to the next slide, please, is this lot is almost entirely paved now, except for that one front corner. So everywhere on here that you see the marking for parking, this is actually pavement. What's being proposed is, and if you go to the 2 slides down, is that all of the crosshatch will become grass, and only the pavement in the gray where you see the cars will there be pavement. So we're removing a significant amount of pavement from the property and restoring it to pervious surface or grass, if you will. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to, well, let's go through some slides. So here's go back to the, go down the first photograph.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. So these were taken off the real estate page because they are photos I couldn't take. So here's a photo of the front elevation. And next slide. And here's a more aerial photo. You can see the project and you can see how deep the property is. Next slide, please. And again, here's a photo of another looking to the north. Next slide. And here's a rear photo. So you see all that stuff that was added in the back as a part of the 2001 renovations after the fire. Next slide, please. Again, here's another photo of the back. Eileen will explain how that's all going to change. Next slide. And here's the existing garage in the back. Next slide, please. And here's just some of the, I was gonna say, we didn't really show that detail. So here's on the easterly elevation, there's gonna be some changes on this. Eileen will go over. Next slide, please. And here's that addition off of the garage in the back that we're removing. Next slide, please. And here's a picture from across the street of the mall. So you can see the one garage in the back, but you're not gonna be able to see across the street the new garage. Next slide, please. And again, here's across the street from the mall. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Eileen.
Hello again. The changes that are happening for this brick structure are really rather minimal. So, and it's even hard to see having existing proposed on this sheet, but I'll point them out. On the right side is the proposed, and if you look to the bottom left, we just have a small window change at the ground level, just for egress purposes. Thank you, Andy. And then to the right side of that same drawing, and sitting in front of the sunroom that's 1 story, you just see a side view of the proposed stair. And I'll show that in another elevation for the eastern side where that's changing, but really this elevation is pretty much intact from what exists today. And then the next slide. Now we're on the western side of the property. This is the side where the driveway is. And what is the easy thing to pick out is that spiral stair. With those additions that you saw on the back elevation, it has, when it had the sort of office spaces as use, there was that addition that was rather commercial in feel. So the idea is to remove some of the clutter of structure. That spiral stair goes away, and then 2 levels of decks are removed. And then the proposal is 3-tiered, small addition on 3 levels. And so you can see that on the right drawing. That addition is going to be different in materials from the brick. That's going to be wood with clapboards, but keeping the same window type of the 6/6 windows throughout. And then if we go to the next slide. And here it's clearer on the back elevation. Again, the right side of the structure is where you see the addition on the right drawing. We're holding it back from the corner and below the existing main roof eave line. So really staying subordinate to the primary structure and cleaning up as much as we can that sort of multi-tiered deck that's happening. The ground level will have a similar type of construction where you're on posts, so that we can maintain some of the openness at that lower level, but really taking a small hip roof and staying minimal in form and its shape. And then one more slide will show the other changes, which is at the ground on the right drawing. If you look at the bottom left window, we have an egress change there similarly. And then that stair that I pointed out on the first slide, that's that window that gets changed to a French door. So likewise on this east elevation, very minimal in changes. And with that, I will pass the presentation. Oh, sorry, one more drawing. In the rear of the property, the freestanding structure is a 24 by 22 in footprint and will house 2 enclosed garage bays to those units. And with that, that's all for architectural changes to the property.
Thank you, Eileen. So just as so there will be 7 exterior parking spaces and 4 interior parking spaces. So we're required to have 7 altogether, and we will have 11. The current site has 18. So here's a mind map, so you can see the size of the property. You can see kind of the location of everything and what's surrounding it. So you've got multifamily on the left and multifamily on the right, both on the State Street and the immediate right. And then a couple of singles in the back, and then multifamilies in the back, right corner. Next slide, please. So the general special permit criteria for the multifamily use under section 10H7 is whether or not the listed, the table of uses lists the requested use, and is here. The property is located in the R3 district, and multifamily is allowed by special permit. Indeed, the R3 district, which is quite small now, is the only district aside from the smart growth district where multifamily is permitted. And the proposal is to convert the building from a non-conforming mixed use to the multifamily conforming use by special permit. The next is that the requested use is essential or desirable to the public convenience and welfare. Here, a multifamily use is prevalent throughout the R3 district. And other than the smart growth district, again, it's the most dense district in the city. The area includes multifamily housing, and by including multifamily housing in the R3 district, the city is deemed to be desirable, and certainly the location of the property adjacent to the downtown area shows that it's convenient for the health and welfare of the city. The next is that the requested use will not create any undue traffic congestion or unduly impair pedestrian safety. Here, obviously, there's sidewalks on both sides of High Street. We're actually reducing the number of parking spaces required The current spaces are required to be 18. We're reducing the requirement to 7, although we're providing 11 for guest parking. Additionally, the office use has comings and goings during the day, where the peak hours for traffic for residential use would be early in the morning and late in the evening. So that is reduced as well. The next is that the requested use will not overload public water drainage or sewer systems. Here, we're adding additional 4 bedrooms. That would be an additional 440 gallons per day of water usage. But you have to subtract from that the current usage for the office space, which would be nominal, but then so it's going to be less than 440. And given the amount of sewer and water that we service in the city of Newburyport, that's a negligible amount and impact on that. But in addition, importantly, in this instance, the stormwater will be reduced by the inclusion of that now pervious area and lawn that's going to be created in that back, and the removal of all of that hot top. And I think that's a particular bonus to this development. The next is, are there any special regulations for the use? And there are none. The next is whether the use will not impair the integrity or character of the district or adjoining districts. Here, the R3 multifamily use is actually allowed in the R3 district. We're getting rid of a non-conforming use, which the ordinance requests that we do to make things more conforming. So it is consistent with the integrity and character of the district, and particularly the preservation, obviously, of the historic structure. The next is that the requested use will not, by its addition to the neighborhood, cause an excess of that use. Again, the R3 allows multifamily. There's multifamily throughout there, but there's also singles and twos, so there won't be too many of that. The next is that the proposed use is in harmony with the purpose and intent of the ordinance, and here this fits squarely within the purpose of the R3, so it is. And then finally, that the proposed use shall not be conducted in a manner so as to omit any dangerous, noxious, or injurious or otherwise objectionable activities. And of course, this is just a multifamily use, so it will. So then we seek a special permit under the DOD, and in accordance with the DOD, new construction or alterations must be compatible with the existing historic buildings and structures within the DOD. And then there's a set of criteria that we go through. The subject historic building, structure, exterior features won't disrupt the essential integrity and form of the district or the building, the lot where it's located or its setting within the DOD. And for new construction and alteration within the DOD, it has to be compatible with size, scale, height, color, material, and character, subject to the historic building, the exterior architectural features, the lot where it's located, and setting within the DOD. I note to you that the Historic Commission's advisory report says that it does all of this and it doesn't adversely affect the historic district or building. We believe that since the addition is actually removing a conglomerate of more modern additions on the rear and making it more uniform, that's actually a benefit. What Eileen didn't say is the current openings in that rear, in the brick in the rear, are staying intact. So under the Secretary of the Interior standards, one of the criteria is that you could actually remove the structure, the new addition, and the old structure would be intact. And so those openings will be intact. They will just be interior windows and walk and doorways. So I think that that's really important. And also, of course, the addition is subservient to the historic structure, as Eileen discussed. And the proposed garage structure is also like at the very rear of the structure, not really visible, certainly from High Street. It certainly doesn't interfere with the existing historic structure. And with that, we think the board can make the finding of 1 through 4 under the DOD to find that a special permit can be granted. The next is a special permit for nonconformity. So now that we've gotten the variances, the only nonconformity that exists is the front yard setback and the side yard setback of the existing garage. And for commercial structures or any building that is 3-family or above, the special permit criteria is that you can't extend or intensify any of the nonconformities. So we don't do that at all. We don't touch those at all. So we pass that. The next is that the proposed modifications will not be substantially more detrimental to the structure or the neighborhood than the existing non-conforming structure. And here, as I indicated before, All of the additions are the back, the other modest changes don't impact the nonconformities. And certainly the proposed changes will not be substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood than the existing non-conforming structure. And with that, we would ask that the board grant a special permit for nonconformities, a special permit under the DOD, and a special permit for multifamily use.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for, Alden?
Yes, just a question concerning the existing garage. Is there any changes to that or exterior material change?
Eileen, you want to talk about that?
And in addition to that, just what the materials are for the additional garage being built? Does that match the addition on the back of the building?
That is correct, yes. So that will also be a wood frame structure with clapboards for the siding and architectural shingles for the roof. For the new structure, the existing garage will actually have the garage doors change in location, but the materials will likewise be the same as the proposed clapboard. Will improve the doors situation, and as well as if any windows are repaired, they'll also be of a high level window to match the rest. And again, that little piece gets removed off the back. That is shown.
Where you go? I had a question about curiosity question about the site plan, and when you look at the landscaping on the, I guess, the west side of the property, what is that little bulge that heads back toward the fence? Is that needed for cars backing out, or is it where the landscaping is, no, other side, going down right there to the right?
Oh,
Right there.
This, sorry.
Yeah. Why is that needed?
That currently is there
Right.
as asphalt, yes. So we're actually preserving a little bit more there because there's the parking spots right directly above them. But otherwise, we're pulling away from the bottom edge is the fence line. We're pulling away towards the High Street property and get closer to the house just to get some soft, less asphalt, a little soften that entry.
I always
Green
look
line.
at something like that, and it seems like it might be hard to maintain, but it gets very narrow like that, so which is why I'm wondering about why it narrows down to a narrow point and then,
It's a good point. There's actually, if you could slightly see it, Andy, I don't know if you could point to the two lots actually.
Yeah.
There is literally a connection right in there from asphalt to asphalt from property line.
Okay.
So Andy, if you go towards High Street a little bit on that, see how there's that perpendicular line? Yeah, there. That area there is actually connected. There's no fence right in that area. And so I'm just bringing it up as it's just a continuous flow at the moment of asphalt.
It's all asphalt.
It's all asphalt.
and then I have another question that's has nothing to do really with this application, but since you're here, on the front of the house, and this is the kind of thing that I would never notice if I hadn't seen a visual drawing like that. The front door is a little bit, well, the windows are a little bit offset on the front doors. It's not a symmetrical building. Slide 28, I think it is.
Okay, so I was just trying to find the right,
The left,
pages on the other.
So, I just was wondering, is that typical?
I don't know if it's typical, but it's true. The left side, I had to double check it over and over. And there's a long, deep masonry wall through it. So if you were to be to the left of the front door, there is a sort of what I would imagine a bearing wall that they had put in, and it's back through the building all the way from front to back.
Yeah.
So there's some curious things there. Typical, I don't know about that, but there's certainly an asymmetry that you wouldn't know until you
I
were.
think I might look at houses up and
Study
down
it,
High Street
yeah.
for now on.
Let's have a look at your thing.
Thank you. Are there other questions for the applicant? Okay, if there aren't any, I will open the public hearing. Is there anybody here who would like to speak to this application? And seeing none, there's nobody online?
Not seeing any hands at this point.
Okay, so I will close the public comment period and, further discussion or motion.
Offer a motion to approve the special permit for nonconformities, the special permit for multifamily use, and the special permit on the downtown overlay district. With the special conditions from the staff report, which relates to the sidewalk repair.
Thank you, and I presume all the findings that are outlined in the staff report and that attorney being spoken to during the hearing that is to capture those, especially, okay, thank you.
Second,
I'll second it.
thank you, Charlie. Okay, we will, do a roll call. Alden,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Charlie,
Yes.
and I vote yes also.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Okay, that's the end of our public hearings. Moving on to general business, the first item is a request for release of security for the reserve at Backup Farm. I understand there's a request for continuance or postponement.
Correct, I think they've asked for this to be on the next agenda, hoping that this will wrap up by that time. So we'll circle back, of course, regarding we'll take this to the next duty, Mr. Design.
And we don't need to have a vote for that.
You don't need to vote for that.
Okay, we're up to the reviewing the draft zoning recommendation for ordinance 164, updating the multifamily use definition and a map change in the state of the high streets. Does anybody have any concerns, questions, comments on the draft? I think, the point was that we voted at our last meeting and my task was to memorialize our vote. So it doesn't need to be a lot of discussion unless you find something that you want to add or change.
I think the draft, it's from my point of view, I'm just curious about whether there have been any discussions about the deed restriction.
A great question.
So that's the biggest concern that has been expressed.
Sure, I did reach out, we discussed with the butters, we discussed it, the extended time with counselors and so forth, this issue come up in various different formats. I had reached out to the global folks, in addition to talking to the local buyer who's interested, with the purchase and sale agreement, buying it and pursuing the residential development. Reached out to global, the idea here is to not just have an agreement. The development agreement that was set in place is meant to put a define a box around the type of development that can happen there, minimize the extent to which something could be proposed down the road during permitting that would be problematic. Does that, I think, relatively well, and it's a relatively decent plan that's encapsulated there. Also specifies some particulars about the scope of the architecture and the scale of it. However, this issue of the use on the property came up with the R3 district. Although I'll reiterate here, although I think it's unlikely that the zoning board of appeals, even if they were to receive an application for commercial use in that district, which is allowed by special permit, I do think it's unlikely that they would be inclined to approve that in the context of everything we've discussed here, in its location in particular, close to the intersection and traffic that might be generated by that. But having said that, recognizing that there is a special permit path, I did reach out to the local folks, ask if they are inclined to or willing to, in order to address this concern and help expedite the council's consideration of zoning after this planning board advisory report, if they would agree to cooperate, essentially almost like a tripartite agreement, to have something comparable to the development agreement put on at the registry on the property. We've talked about mechanics and we'll circle back on that, but we haven't closed that loop, but there seems to be sort of a positive discussion at least happening on that front anyway between the parties. So we're looking to try to circle back on that. We weren't able to provide an answer tonight, but we'll certainly circle back to the city council and we'll let you know as well. If that pans out in the next couple weeks, the hope is to return with something that will provide that confidence level that if the council adopts the R3 zoning, there will not be, in the future, any commercial uses there, period. Not just through the zoning, but through deed restrictions. So we'll circle back and let you know, but we are happy to do that.
But as you said, everything that people have expressed a concern about in terms of potential commercial development, that's all subject to special permit review.
Correct, and discretionary, and again, I can't, completely, know what the Board of Appeals would look at here, but I think it's unlikely, especially given the several years of discussion about residential, and like I said, its location would be in my view, not a good location to be encouraging commercial uses. So I obviously, if our office was commenting on an application, if that were hypothetically, although unlikely to come forward down the road for some reason, absent any kind of deed restriction, our office would essentially be recommending against that as well. Yeah.
It also seems that residential uses in Newburyport's market is as high as industrial at this point.
Yeah, it's fair, yeah.
We just approved the loss of an office use.
Right.
Residential. Any other comments or questions?
Otherwise, I'll just say that I think the draft recommendations does capture our discussion and the points we made, especially pertaining to the spot zoning and concerns about applying that wording change to across the city as far as that zone. So I think it's a good one.
I agree.
Anything else? I guess I would, then, if there are no other comments, ask for a motion to approve the report and send it to the city council.
So moved. Okay.
And I think we're done with property stuff, so I let you go to the remaining things and going forward. Alden,
Yes.
yeah,
I am recusing myself from this, so.
Okay.
I'll abstain.
that's right. Bob.
Yeah.
Jamie,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Charlie,
Yes.
Ryan,
Yes.
and I believe yes. Okay, thank you. Get that out of the way. Okay, next item is approval of minutes. So I have not had a chance to review the November 15th minutes yet, so we'll put it on the next meeting. But November 1st, I reviewed, and Bob reviewed, I know other people reviewed. Any other comments? Have a motion to approve the November 1st minutes?
Move to approve the November 1st minutes.
In case there's a second. All those in favor, all,
Yes.
yeah,
I think I need to abstain. I don't
because
think
you were
so.
here.
Yeah.
Bob.
Yeah.
Jamie,
Yes.
Heather,
Yes.
Charlie,
Yes.
Ryan,
I abstained too because I was.
okay, and I vote yes, thank you. Okay, so we're on to discussion and other updates.
I'm not gonna keep you here long. I would just say that we're continuing to work behind the scenes on the background material and trying to ramp up essentially for a fair amount of work we're doing going into early next year. We're interested in doing, obviously, we have to do the MBTA communities zoning for the state. Obviously, you have some benefits to come out of that, but we have to do that. And we're also interested in, we applied for a state grant for the Story Avenue rezoning, so we're looking at that as well. There is a relationship between those two because we can count some of the Story Avenue area as part of that rezoning to satisfy the state. So there'll be iterative kind of discussion between the two areas of the city, the 4-yard district, and sort of building off of that, for MBTA communities and possibly other areas of the city like Story Avenue that can be used to satisfy those state requirements. So I think thus far, what we've been contemplating is something very parallel to or comparable to the 4-yard district in terms of its permit process or structure, design guidelines, things like that. Recognizing perhaps streamline sort of the question of uses, residential, multifamily as a right, mixed use as a right, but specifying design standards and things like that. So I would say roughly comparable to what we've been trying to achieve in the 4-yard district. I know I've mentioned this before, just a few other particulars, but the council obviously had to finish up a couple of different things, this year. So it was a little hard to get, especially given that they only had one other meeting this month to get sort of bandwidth on this particular issue. So we're doing some background work now to kind of do, presentation materials and some additional kind of informal discussions so we can ramp up heavily as we go into January and the council is back in session again and we can establish who is a working committee on there and then we'll be working with his memberships. Subcommittees sometimes change, so there will be members. So we'll be circling back on that. And we have a few folks who are already interested in working on, some of this in the background, so we can bring forward, obviously, for all of you, the deliverables, so to speak, which is really drafts of zoning that we would propose to work through and then bring to the city council for adoption. And with the Story Avenue area, for instance, one of the expectations with the state grant and everything else is that by basically spring, we'll bring it to the city council a package because opportunity to, show the state what we worked on and show them that we really brought that package forward for consideration by the council. So that-
One of the difficult things is gonna be, bringing a zoning, potentially complex zoning amendment to the city council during budget season, right? So
Sure, yeah.
it almost seems like we almost need to get it by March in order to get their attention to it.
Yeah, and I don't know, I mean, one of the, it's another discussion, of course, but one of them might be sort of, giving folks a lot of information, walking through as much as we can. Also, to some extent, giving them time to digest and then deal with the follow-up or further, action that they might need, or if there's further debate or discussion there after the budget cycle, so to speak, because it does take a couple months of their time and bandwidth almost entirely during, that month or two period, so.
Do you, going back to the, global situation, do you anticipate, we're going to send this to the council for next Monday night, but do you expect that they'll send it to committee and then they'll do it in 2 meetings in January?
Well, again, whether or not the votes take place in January, I leave that to the council, of course, I think, there's not, I don't think there's a chance of this Monday, that they will go to the council. So I think what will happen is either they'll take that communication and actually receive it in January and have it go to committee, or more likely, I think what will happen is we will push it out tomorrow, with the draft, of course, send it out to the council, and I assume that on this coming Monday night, they'll receive it, send it to committee, and then they'll get carried over to the next session, so that the communication they receive from you will go with the zoning amendment into January, and they will hopefully pick up the discussion with whatever we put back about the deed restriction, and then be able to hopefully take those 2 votes in January. And
Kind of this January 31st deadline, part of the preliminary.
is that the deadline? Yeah, I think that's right, yeah.
So
Yeah.
we gotta get on the city council, get on with it.
We'll communicate as best we can, we'll provide the recommendation for adoption, and, we're happy to try to address the other concern again, as much as that may be, potential turnaround. And we'll circle back to that information, and we'll leave it to the council, of course, at that point, if, hopefully folks feeling that, issues have been reasonably addressed, and then, of course, there'll be permitting after that has to happen at the discretion of the ZBA, so.
Anything else? Okay, so, in terms of meetings, I think we're at the point where we can cancel the January 3rd meeting.
Everybody feels very positive about meeting on January 3rd, so. Okay.
So you can take that off your calendars. We had talked about having a special meeting to talk about zoning, but I think given that we're not even at the point of having a consultant on board yet, we could probably hold that off until maybe February, something like that.
Sure, and I'm also trying to, it's a bit of a limbo state right now, because with the changes in the council happening, starting in January, it's a little bit unclear, sort of, who might be having a transition, sort of, who are our contacts and working group, from there, and so, we'll definitely circle back on that, and, just stay tuned for maybe more, emails or updates on that front, but like you said, as opposed to a formal meeting, certainly having some informal discussions and then ramping up more heavily as we go into January. I may, certainly push out to you before the holidays, some material to kind of digest between now and then, just to kind of, pick up where Rick had left off with some overview slides.
And does that refer to both the Story Avenue and the?
I think both,
And the
yeah, probably both.
MBTA?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, so because we're canceling the January 3rd meeting, which we would normally have election of officers, I'm calling a snap election for our next meeting. Which I believe is, what is that, the 20th? And, the short campaign season.
Is that, just like, would that be at the beginning or end of the agenda?
Let's do it at the end of the agenda.
Yeah.
And, I just would like to have, because we're canceling the first meeting of the year, I'd like to have the slate of officers in place for next year.
Sure.
I want to say that I've enjoyed my first year as chair. My first term, I'm happy to do it again, but if anybody else would like to do it, please feel free. And if anybody, and I suppose the same thing is true for vice chair and clerk or secretary. If you don't want to do it anymore, please let Andy know. But if anybody wants to jump into the fray, so be it. So we'll have that election at the end of our meeting on the 20th.
So I can't be here the 20th, is that gonna affect voting for that?
Only if you're running for it, no?
Definitely
It
not.
won't.
Okay.
Oh, no, you may end
My
up
plate is
you
full.
may end up in chair, because you were gonna be chair tonight, because you didn't have it.
Oh, yeah, right. Oh, yeah. It was so close.
Okay, any other questions? Charlie, anything?
No, I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for doing this, guys.
Okay, so, motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn?
I'll second it.
Second, okay, I'm not gonna call a roll call. All in favor? You count it, Richard. Aye.
Thanks, Trevor. Good night.
Thank you.
We might have a record of it. Yeah.